You want to see my sewing room? And have a look. We built and kitted out this space 5 years ago for under 10 grand for me to run my small business from. Let me show you round. I knew when I moved from the house into the studio that I wanted to have my fabric behind closed doors, away from the dust, away from the sunlight. So as much as I used to love my rainbow wall of fabric being on display, it's also fabulous that I can just close the doors on this. These little foldable storage baskets are perfect for fat quarters. I don't use bigger quantities of fabric. I work entirely in small scale free motion applique. I don't do quilting, so I don't buy yardage. They mean I can pull out a whole selection of fabrics as and when I need to pick something for a project, and they make filing away at the end of the day the easiest job in the world. My threads are on the inside of the fabric cupboard doors so that I can colour match easily. They're stored in acrylic nail polish racks meant for salons. They are exactly the right size for thread spools. I put some little strips of polystyrene in the back of them to make them 2-tier so that I can store even more thread. And I can slam the cupboard doors quite happily without them all falling out. I also have a third fabric cupboard on this wall, which is where I store all my neutrals. And I have 2 baskets of Christmas fabric. I have a very modest collection of Liberty fabric. Controversial opinion. It's not actually my favourite fabric in the world to use. I think Tana lawn is too thin for appliques. The scale of Liberty prints are very often way too big for what I need for my work. And I think a lot of makers just use Liberty for the name, if I'm honest. There you go, I said it. You asked about my messy cupboard. I'm really sorry to disappoint, but this is as bad as it gets. This is my cupboard for things like canvas. I used to make a lot of cushions and that sort of thing, and this is just stuff that I will use for something one day. I use sometimes for advent calendars. We've got advent calendar backs here. I've got bigger pieces of cottons that I might use one day. There's a box of all sorts of random stuff that might come in handy for something. So this just sits in the corner quietly, not really offending anyone, and I maybe open this cupboard twice a year. This is the last of my fabric cupboards, and this one is purely for solid fabrics. They're right above my pressing bench just because I use them most often, and they're filed away in exactly the same way the rest of the fabrics are. Up here I've also got fairy hair colours, fairy skin tones and fairy jeans stored separately. It just means that the product I make most of all is really easy to track down the fabrics for. And on that note, I'm going to show you my fairy drawers, which always causes a bit of hilarity. Fairy wings and shoes, fairy bodies, fairy hairdo, fairy outfits, tiny sewing machines for your stitchy fairies. So for me, preparation in the studio is key to absolutely everything. I love a bit of organisation. I really, really geek out over storage and efficiencies, I suppose is the word. Making sure that I have these cut and ready and every eventuality is covered means that even if I get an unexpected busy spell, if somebody shares something and I get 100 orders ping in one go, I'm prepared. Generally, I can cope with it. There might be the odd thing I need to cut a batch of, but we're good to go. Now, this one might be a little bit niche, but I'm asked about them almost on a daily basis, so I'm going to cover this because this is a no holds barred, every corner of the studio tour. I have these on most of my cupboard fronts. Now, my cupboards have these sort of doors with the lip on the top. These are little bins from IKEA. They're designed to go on a rail on your kitchen wall. They don't need a rail if you have this sort of cupboard door that has the handle-less design. They hang straight on there and they have them everywhere. So I don't need to be running around trying to find a bin. I have them next to my applique bench so that I can just scoop things straight in. I keep a thread bin next to my machine so all the thread goes in. This is really sad, but I'm going to show you anyway because I feel like we're friends now. Every year I start a thread jar, and this is last year's. This is my 2025 thread jar. This is ridiculously tightly packed. This is every single offcut from my machine throughout the course of the year. It's like a trophy at the end of the year. If you're not doing this, start, because it's a lovely thing to look back on. And I also really love how throughout the course of this, you can kind of see the seasons. So there's a patch a little way down that is all pinks and reds, which was obviously Valentine's Day. You can definitely see Christmas because it's all red and green. And there's also a pale pink and pale yellow bit, which was obviously Easter. So there you go, thread trophy. If you don't have one of these, get one started now. You're only 3 weeks into the year, you'll be fine. Last year I branched out a little bit and I started selling some of the supplies that I use every day in my studio, some of the things that are tried and tested that I have used myself for my own products for so long.
It's something I'd put off for a long time. I think I'd always envisaged that if I started selling supplies, I would end up with a warehouse full of bolts of fabric, which is so not something I want to end up doing. So this shelf up here is a relatively new addition to my studio. It contains all the glitter fabric that I sell. I made a point when I started selling things to be really clear that I only wanted to sell in small quantities, small pieces for people who are just making a few pretty things from home. So I have these A5 plastic boxes. I only sell in A5 sheets. It fits perfectly in there. It's all cut and ironed and stashed away as soon as it arrives with me so that it's ready to just pick and pack when an order comes in. Book bands have been one of my best-selling products for as long as I can remember. When I started doing them, I hadn't really seen anybody else making them. They are probably the product I make most of. No matter what design people are going for, the book bands are my best seller. I make my fairies as book bands. These are one of the things that I sell a downloadable tutorial for. And off the back of that, I decided to start selling the supplies to make these as well. So I now sell the glitter fabric, which is stored up here, and the elastic as well to make these. I made quite a conscious decision when I started selling the elastic to only sell it in small lengths. I'm not selling meters or yards. I just do it in the length that you need to make one of these products that I sell the tutorials for. Again, it's part of not wanting this to kind of take over my whole business. It's just something that sits quite nicely alongside it. So I buy 100 meters at a time on rolls, which I store down here. And I then cut it up into exactly the right length to make one of these. So this cupboard is right behind my pressing bench, so that when I'm making up my orders, I can just reach into this cupboard and grab exactly the right colour for whatever I'm making. It's also upscaled a little bit in the last 6 months or so because I'm selling lots of it as well as just using it myself. But this is how I store it. So these are all stored in here in exactly the right length to make a book band. And then when an order comes in, I can either make up my order or I can pick and pack these for somebody who's going to make their own. I currently have about 35 different elastics on my website. I know I have another parcel of them on the way because I do have an elastic buying problem. I just can't seem to leave any colour uncovered. So that's my big confession. A whole cupboard full of elastic. I know it's disgraceful, but now I can justify it because you're buying it from me too. It makes perfect sense. This is the corner where I make up all your orders, where all the fairies come to life, where everything gets pieced and put together. For years, when I was in the dining room in the house, I worked off an ironing board. And in actual fact, I spend more of my day at this bench than I do sat at the sewing machine finishing the orders off. So when I moved in here, I was adamant there was going to be a better solution than just an ironing board. So this is what we came up with. I have a dedicated corner with felt mats. These are, if you've not used one of these before, they are a game changer. This corner here is underneath the pressing mat. So we've got the solid fabric cupboard up here, fairy drawers right behind my head, just so you can stay on top of where we are in the studio. We have an entire cupboard full of felt down here. I buy huge wholesale bolts of cream wool felt. If you've ever asked what I applique onto, this is it. I buy it in massive bolts, but I don't have anywhere to store it and keep it clean. So I cut it up, I iron it, make it into manageable chunks, and I store it all away in this cupboard so that I can just grab what I need and work with a smaller piece at a time. I also have a cupboard down here full of things like interfacing, spray mount, spray starch, my big iron that hardly ever gets used, but got to have one nonetheless. And then on IKEA curtain poles on the side of this cupboard, I've got heat and bond and Bonder web. Quick sneak peeks, because I know you're going to ask me. I also sell loads and loads of buttons on my website. I have always had a button obsession. I've loved them since as long as I can remember. Who doesn't love a good button? This shelf here is filled with all the buttons that I sell. They're split up into tiny little glassine bags, which just make them perfect. I sell in tiny quantities. If you need gorgeous buttons, I have curated the best selection for you. And this is where I store them, and this is where I grab them from when your orders come in. This side over here is like an overflow of that shelf. This is things like key fobs, key rings. I do gorgeous things like heart-shaped split rings. They're all made by a fabulous company in the UK. They are the best quality I can lay my hands on. I absolutely adore them. I use them on all my products, and they are the only ones I would sell to you. They don't tarnish. They're just lovely. So this is where they all come from. If you place an order for those, this is literally it. It's not a huge operation. It's just me and these little boxes. I do all my work on a Bernina 570. She's absolutely perfect for the work I do. I also have a Bernina 480 here that I've had for 5 or 6 years. This one was a new addition about 6 months ago, and she has quickly become my favourite. I don't use a computerised embroidery module on this, and I don't use the Bernina stitch regulator. The machine can take both. They're just not for me. The stitch regulator, I think, from my limited practice with it, is designed purely for people who quilt. I think you need to be going fast to get the benefit of it. If you've ever watched me sew in real time, you'll know that I am not fast. I go for precision over speed. So in the process of showing you the sewing machine, I've also just spotted there's another thread shelf here. I keep the Fairy threads right next to my sewing machine. I know that most days I'm going to be sewing up fairies of some description, so these are just to hand. They stop me having to think too much about which shades I need to go with which fabric. They're separate to everything else and they just stay out all the time. I get through those an awful lot quicker than the ones in the cupboard, so there's no risk of them getting dusty. They get used up too quickly. Another little trick is that I keep a little wooden bowl next to my sewing machine at all times. Because my threads are on the wall behind me here while I'm sewing, I will take the bowl, collect up everything I need for the projects I'm doing that day, and as I'm finished with them, they go back in the bowl, and then at the end of the day I can just take them and put them straight in the cupboard. If I don't have this, they tend to end up rolling on the floor, falling underneath things, unravelling. They get left for days. So at least with this, I know that when I do my tidy up at the end of the working day, I just grab my bowl, file them away. And then the last corner that I'm going to show you is my packing corner. So I have my postcards that I write my thank you notes on. I have these that I print in-house. This is literally just the cards that I use to back all my products, the things I wrap the book bands around to post them. They've just got my website address on the side. I have a big stash of those. I've got all the pretty bits and pieces that go in the parcels. Huge roll of personalised stickers with my logo on, and then this cupboard down here is where I store all the boring bits that we kind of have to have, but they're not so pretty. So I made a very conscious decision a few years ago that everything I sold was going to be letterbox size. There is nothing worse than having to go and sort out a parcel that you've missed delivery of. So I buy these flat pack boxes. Whenever the kids owe me a fiver for something, they come out here and they fold a stack of these for me and they get stashed away. They are absolutely perfect. I buy them in numerous sizes and pretty much everything I sell goes out in these. I think that's all I've got for you today. You'll have to let me know in the comments if there's anything you've seen in the background that you want to know more about, because I am quite sure I've missed loads. If you've enjoyed my studio tour, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so that you can come back and see more. Catch up with you soon.